Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So, first of all, we would like to thank you all for participating in today's evening session. And we welcome His Holiness Bhakti Raghava Swami Maharaj after a gap of maybe 6 or 7 years. So, most of you might be knowing Maharaj already met before. So, Maharaj is, His Holiness Bhakti Raghava Swami Maharaj was born to a French, Canadian, Roman Catholic parents in Ontario, Canada. Maharaj has done a Bachelor of Arts degree at the University of Ottawa in 1968, majoring in philosophy and social psychology, and Maharaja completed his master's degree in education from the State University of Yogyakarta in 2004 and has currently submitted his PhD thesis in Osmania University, Hyderabad. He joined the Hare Krishna movement in 1974 and was initiated the same year as Raghava Pandita Das from His Divine Grace Avyacharanavenda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. He accepted the order of Sannyasa on Gaura Purnima of 1985. From 1974 to 1976, Maharaj served at the Iskcon Ottawa Temple, and from 1976 to 1992, Maharaja lived in India, pioneering the new Bhakta program and the Namahatta village preaching program from Sridham Mayapur and the Bhaktivedanta Youth Services BYS from Iskcon Calcutta. During the early days of Mayapur development, Maharaj lost one of his leg due to an attack with a bomb in Mayapur. From 1993, actually Maharaj was guarding in the night, if I am not wrong, our Mayapur temple. At them they attacked actually. From 1993 to 2000, Maharaj served as co-GBC for Iskcon Canada and as the temple president for Iskcon Montreal. From 2001 to 2004, Maharaja was based in Indonesia, where he helped to develop and oversee 6 rural community projects, namely Gita Nagari Baru, in addition to youth hostels. In the year 2006, Maharaj formed an NGO called the Global Varnashrama Educational Society Cultural Organization, GLOVESCO, and is spearheading a rural community called Yeshodapura Ashrama in Cambodia. In the same year, after a gap of 13 years, he returned to India and spearheaded a rural project in South India called Sahyadri Sri Krishna Balarama Kshetra, SSKBK, from where courses on Varnashrama College was introduced. He was instrumental in establishing the National Varnashrama Development Committee for India in the year 2007, and in the November 2009 was appointed as National Minister for the Daiva Varnashrama Ministry, promoting rural development in India. During the Corona period, Maharaj launched a website called Varnashrama College Online, where Vedic courses are taught. Currently, he is overlooking a project called Varnashrama College Foundation and Vaishnava Research Institute in Sridham, Mayapur. Maharaj has also been instrumental in establishing a Vedic Gurukula in Sahyadri Goloka Dhama in Hebri, Karnataka, South India. Maharaj has authored several books, namely The Science of Daiva Varnashrama Education, Make Vrindavan Village, Modernity is Killing Civilization, and many more. Hare Krishna. So Maharaj has done such a vast service to Srila Prabhupada and the mission of Srila Prabhupada. We chant one time Hare Krishna Mahamatra, welcoming Maharaj. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much, Maharaj, for explaining.
Very well. Kartham, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Where's the clock?
It's not possible to see.
You mean the green?
Blue, no, below that is bluish. It's difficult.
Oh, yeah,
Now it's
the glare.
820.
Okay, I have this. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. Oh. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajadana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajadana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajadana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajadana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunj Bihari Radha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunj Bihari Radha Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Radha Madhava Radha Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya, Jaya, Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Gaur Pimanande. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa. Privrajgacharya Stotra Satya Sri Simar His Divine Grace. Sirabai Charanarvind Bhakti Raghava Swami. Srila Prabhupada ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki. Iskcon DBT, Founder Acharyas, Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki. Samavata Bhakta Vrinda ki. Harinam Sankirtan ki. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Jaini Thai Gaur Pimanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, to Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasyatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I'd like to request everyone to kindly fold your hands, holding them close to your heart, and repeat the following two short mantras. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Surabhyay Namaha. Om Surabhyay Namaha. Om Surabhyay Namaha. Mukham karoti vasalam pangum nangayate girim. Yat kripat maham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Yat kripat maham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki, Jai Sri Prabhupada ki. Thank you all very much for coming this evening to the program, and also thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to once again visit your yatra after quite a few years. Yeah, I'm in the middle of a, I guess you call it a golf tour, having spent the last 4 or 5 days in Dubai, and after a few days we'll be going to Kuwait before going back to Sridham Mayapur. Before I begin the session this evening, which for which we have given the title of Vedic Sociology. It might be a scary title for some. We'll break it down. I'd like to request the devotees to actually just today I received news, possibly some of you have also, the health condition of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj is quite serious at this time, and I'd like to request the devotees all together we can just chant Hare Krishna once for his well-being. Yeah. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj is one of the stalwarts, as we all know, frontline pioneer preacher since the early days in Canada. I happen to be from Canada. I was not there in those very early days. This goes back to the late 1960s, isn't it? Srila Prabhupada, as we all know, went to America in 1965, and shortly after registrating actually the Iskcon Society in New York City the following year, 1966. Then he went to Montreal. He had to go to Montreal. Srila Prabhupada in America was a foreigner. Foreigners have visa issues very often. So he had to go. He spent 3 months in Montreal. At that time, Gopal Krishna Maharaj, who was working, I believe, in Toronto, had met Srila Prabhupada for the first time. And as they say, the rest is history. From the very beginning, he became very, very much attached to Srila Prabhupada and to the mission of Krishna consciousness. So this evening, actually, Vedic sociology is something we don't hear about possibly very much. In the last 5 years, mainly my my work or my research has been on the topic of Vedic sociology, and it's an area which is, for many different reasons, of great importance to all of us individually, as well as collectively as a society. Our time is relatively short. I will not go through all the slides. I have a PowerPoint presentation that deals with the subject matter, and just maybe try to bring out a few important aspects which we can try to relate to. And if time allows, there's a short video I'd like to share. Everyone, including devotees, like to see videos that are bringing home maybe messages more vividly, more clearly than what we can convey sometimes in words. Yeah, a picture, as they say, is worth 1,000 words. What to speak of a video? Yeah. So I'll bring it up now. I notice that you have very good arrangement here on both sides. The screen is there. And let's see. Hopefully this should go well. This is actually one of 5 PowerPoints on the subject matter of Vedic sociology. It happens to be like the introduction, which is always a good place to begin with. Okay, yeah. And some of you may not be familiar with an important work, what is called the Kautilya Arthashastra. Kautilya Arthashastra was written by Chanakya Pandit, and Srila Prabhupada often quotes Chanakya, who gave many important instructions. And in this particular book, Kautilya Arthashastra, there is reference to how in our Vedic culture, sociology has to do with what is called the science of society, the science of communities. And community is something very important, especially in Kali Yuga. The Sankirtan movement introduced by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is especially meant to bring, isn't it, people together as congregations to practice together Krishna consciousness. And of course, in the context of sociology, we have very important directives, very important instructions given in our Shastra, how society is meant to be arranged or organized so that ultimately our primary goal and purpose of life, which is to become elevated in consciousness, which is meant to be bringing us to Krishna consciousness, how this can be facilitated by how society is arranged. So we have all seen or heard this motto repeated by Srila Prabhupada on many occasions, simple living and high thinking. Our project, Prabhupada explains, our primary project is Krishna consciousness. Our main or primary business in life is meant to be the cultivation of Krishna consciousness. And one of the important messages Srila Prabhupada is giving, you produce your own food, you produce your own cloth. Don't be very much anxious for artificial necessities, and save time and be advanced in spiritual life. Part of the presentation covers what is called the whole concept of swadharma. Swadharma, dharma, we all know something about dharma. What we may be less understanding is that there are 2 major levels of dharma. Swa means actually what is natural and original. So we have On the one hand, spiritual swadharma, which is Krishna consciousness, which is bhakti or devotional service. And then we have what is called material swadharma. So Vedic sociology in many ways deals more with material swadharma. And what is important for us to know, to understand, is that Krishna consciousness is not only something fully or completely or exclusively spiritual. Actually, our acharyas explain that for us to understand the spiritual dimension of life, it's also important to know and to understand the material aspect of life, which is actually ultimately Krishna's energy. There is the creator. Krishna is the original creator. Aham sarvasya prabhavu mata sarvam pravartati iti madva bhajanti mam buddha bhava samanditaha. So to appreciate and to understand the creator, it is also of importance to know about his creation, isn't it? The material energy, material world. Part of which is how Krishna has given very clearly defined instructions how we should live, how we should organize society, etc. So, what we often forget, especially in modern day society, is that Vedic culture, which is meant to be an eternal culture, this is an important point. Spiritual life is an eternal activity. Spiritual swadharma is eternal, isn't it? Bhakti is eternal, Krishna is eternal, naturally we are eternal. What we tend to forget or may not be aware of is that the culture, for those who are in the material world, is also meant to be a standard and eternal culture. And one of the features of that eternal culture is that it is agrarian. Agrarian may be a word that some of you may be less familiar with. Agrarian means it is based on land and cows. Agrarian means rural communities. And of course, the ideal model or example for all of us is Vrindavan. Krishna descends in the material world to display and manifest his eternal pastimes that are taking place in Goloka Vrindavan, here on this planet or in the material world in Bhoma Vrindavan. So Vrindavan is meant to be for us not only a spiritual inspiration where Krishna manifests all of these wonderful relationships with his devotees, but also the other dimension in terms of how the residents of Vrindavan live. Prabhupada explains Krishna carries his flute and he goes out every day with Balaram to tend the cows. When he's young, small, he tends the calves. When he's older, the cows. And Balaram carries a plow because he's in charge of agriculture. Plows are meant for the traditional way of doing agriculture. So agrarian culture is therefore the foundation of the Vedic culture, and we see this being brought up again and again. So some of these slides I will go through very quickly. I think what's important is what our acharyas have to say regarding sociology, and the PowerPoint will finish with what is called Chatur Vidya, which will be covered possibly at a later stage. In other words, Vidya means knowledge, and our Vedic culture is based on 4 standard sciences, which, if we properly understand them, and if we are trained according to these four sciences, help us adjust and be part of this standard society. And ultimately, Vedic sociology refers to varnashram, the natural division of the varnas and the ashramas, isn't it? Yeah. So, what I'd like to point out here is that this we won't spend very much time here. We all know how Veda or Vedic knowledge is eternal knowledge, and therefore the knowledge regarding how society is meant to be organized is also eternal knowledge. Now, what is sociology? There are three aspects or three definitions of sociology that I just want to cover very briefly. One is modern concept. This just explains about what is sociology. It means the science of society, how individuals are meant to live amongst, within society. The first aspect, which is known to most people, is what is called Western sociology. Western sociology, we should know, is a relatively recent, we could say, invention. And it started maybe about 200, 300 years ago. And something very major event took place for those who may not have studied history or who are still too young to have studied that kind of history. 250 years ago, you know, there are certain events that happen in life that kind of like affect the future. And we are still under the influence of what happened 250 years ago. What happened 250 years ago was what is called the French Revolution in Europe, where at that time monarchy was the rule of the day, and also Christianity or the church, two very powerful entities. Unfortunately, because it's Kali Yuga, a lot of corruption was there, and the French Revolution basically revolted against those two authorities. And it's very interesting because those two authorities in the Vedic context, the church represent the Brahmanas. Brahmanas, as we all know, are the head of society. They're meant to give spiritual direction. But because there was so much of corruption actually in the church at that time, the whole movement, which continues to this day, of rejecting things that are spiritual or organized, we say religion. And monarchy also was very corrupt, so that was rejected. And monarchy, of course, represents, in our Vedic culture, Kshatriya. So in other words, in the last 250 years, society in general and leaders around the world, and that is our present situation today, which makes it very difficult for us as devotees, because we have, in general, leadership which is not very spiritual, and we have therefore an absence of both the Brahminical element in society and the Kshatriya element within society. And that is why when Srila Prabhupada went to the Western countries, he clearly explained that one of the main purposes of our society is to put back ahead to society, to create brahmanas, and that is one of the important purposes of the Krishna consciousness movement. But Srila Prabhupada, of course, went beyond that and explained that in addition to creating or training, educating brahmanas, we also need to educate kshatriyas. We need to educate vaishyas. We need to also educate shudras. All of the members that make up the system of varna and asrama. So I won't go into the details, but Western sociology, we are very much under the influence of what is called Western way of seeing or understanding things. Another aspect was Indian sociology, which is somewhat better, I would say, but it's more like nationalistic and not taking all the aspects that the Vedic sociology takes into account. Vedic sociology is based on this very important instruction that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita that we all know, we've all heard before, the Chaturvarnyam Maya system, the 4 orders of society. So, just going a little bit ahead here, comparing Western, Indian, and Vedic sociology. Western sociology is basically atheistic in nature, empiric, humanistic, materialistic. We live in a world where everyone is led to believe that the more we can develop materially, economically, we will be happy, which is not the Vedic philosophy. And Indian sociology, which is nationalistic in nature, whereas Vaishnava Vedic sociology is much more holistic. It is authorized because it is backed up by Vedic literature, and it's giving us a proper balance between philosophy and religion. Yeah. So of course we all know we are followers of Lord Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Krishna has a mission to re-establish these principles of dharma, part of which is, as I mentioned a little earlier, not only spiritual swadharma, but also material swadharma. And then, let's see here, yeah. Iskcon's mission, you have actually in the office the 7 purposes, so we won't, but if you read them carefully, I just put them here in red. There's reference to community, to society, in quite a few of them, as you can see here. Members and humanity at large. So, in other words, this aspect is also part of the 7 purposes of our society. I just want to take a few minutes here to explain about what is called, I think I had presented that maybe before, 4 movements that Prabhupada speaks about, which is referred to in his essay on Gita Nagari. I'll ask the question again. How many know about this essay called Gita Nagari? You can raise your hands. A few. Very few. Okay, very few. Gita Nagari is an important essay. I recommend devotees to read it. It's actually part of the folio, what we call the Veda base, and it's not a very long essay, but it's very important. Within that essay, Prabhupada speaks of, Hare Krishna, about 4 movements, and these 4 movements appear here. I'll just bring them up. Whoops. In picture form. The first one, I don't know if you can see, is Kirtan, right? Devotees are performing Kirtan. So the first movement is called Sankirtan movement. The second movement is deity worship movement, isn't it? The third is Prabhupada is chanting on japa, that means spiritual initiation movement. And the fourth one is a picture of Prabhupada in Hyderabad farm that Prabhupada called New Naimisharanya. It means Varnasrama, actually, rural village. So they are summarized as follows: Sankirtan movement, temple worship movement, spiritual initiation movement, and classless society movement. Prabhupada gave it that name somehow, classless society, which means everyone within society, regardless of where they may be situated within the varnas or ashramas, are all meant to practice devotional service and engage in serving the Lord. Yeah. So, yeah. what's interesting is that the first three of those movements, they are focused especially on spiritual activities, whereas the fourth one, which is less, even to this day, less known or less understood within our society. You know, Iskcon as a society and the philosophy of Krishna consciousness is very broad and very deep. And therefore, we all have, in different ways, some attraction or some interest in some particular aspect of the philosophy. For the last so many years, some devotees, myself included, have been trying to highlight especially this aspect, this fourth, let's say this fourth movement. So I'm just bringing this up on the screen. I've talked about these two swadharmas, very important. I'll try to just very briefly conclude on this. Why is it important to understand these two levels of dharma? One being spiritual and one being material. Because we happen to be in the material world where these two realities are there. We are sitting here conscious because the spirit soul is within the body. But we are having this material world, material body, and we are in the material world. So in other words, we have to deal with these two levels of reality. It's like every day we have to maintain this body. We have to feed this body. So in other words, if we neglect either the spiritual aspect or the material dimension, we will create some imbalance. Modern day society is largely highly imbalanced because it's neglecting both of them, isn't it? Modern society is not promoting, because leadership is not understanding about the importance of spiritual life, and we are also not following the proper lifestyle, even materially. If we look at economics, for example, the whole world is in shambles economically, on the verge of economic collapse since a number of years as well, because we have lost. Vedic culture is giving us what is the definition of sustainable economy. And that sustainable economy is connected with what we mentioned a little while back, sustainable or chaturvidya. Chaturvidya. What is sustainable economy in Vedic culture? Krishi gorakshavanijam vaishya karma swabhavajam. That is actually meant to be the standard economy, which will, in a more simplified manner, provide for all of our different necessities of life. So let's see. Yeah. So these are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. The references are here by Srila Prabhupada, making that difference between our material swadharma and our spiritual swadharma. Important concepts that that we should try to understand more. And of course, in India, different from, I would say, many other countries, there's a special ministry promoting this whole ideology, and it has a particular mandate, which I will not read in detail here, but it's focused on rural development. Here's what our acharyas speak, which I think is quite important. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and our own Srila Prabhupada. Those who have, from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, those who have sufficiently studied sociology certainly conclude that the system of varnasrama is the topmost social system. And then he goes on to explain, if one is situated in the principle of varnasrama, then his nature cannot be lost. Rather, one can receive huge opportunity and advantage to cultivate Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada actually made a similar statement in one conversation with many of his disciples who were somewhat challenging, telling Prabhupada, well, we're followers of Lord Chaitanya, all we have to do is chant Hare Krishna. Chant and be happy, our philosophy. Then Prabhupada mentioned that actually the chanting is, of course, always going to be there, but it is not so easy to become a Vaishnava, and therefore, to become Vaishnava, Prabhupada made that statement. He made it a number of times. To become Vaishnava, this system, which is created by Lord Krishna or Varnashrama, is meant to help us actually become Vaishnavas. And then just to continue here, Varnashrama Dharma is the society of the Vaishnavas in their conditional state. That's kind of interesting and important also, because we tend to think that, that we are above Varnashrama. Some may be above, some are above, but generally in the beginning we are still very closely connected with the modes of material nature. I'll go directly to Srila Prabhupada here, who refers to sociology, and he makes the following statement. Sociology is already given by Krishna. This Chaturvarnamaya system that we quoted earlier, this is perfect sociology, Prabhupada explains. And an important instruction given by Srila Prabhupada, there should be a thorough overhauling of the social system, and society should revert to the Vedic principles, that is, the 4 Varnas and the 4 Ashramas. So, I know that when I make this particular presentation to many of the devotees, majority of our devotees, as we know, including probably the majority of you who are here, are more, although some of you may be coming from a village background, but majority of our devotees, like majority of people in society, live in cities, live in urban areas. And so this may seem somewhat like, not so important or secondary or whatever. My main purpose, or one of the purposes, is to highlight how this is an integral part of our philosophy, and how the present arrangement that we are seeing in the world today is actually not the real standard, and in many ways is actually a deviation. That's a whole topic, of course, that would require a bit more time, but I think we can all attest to the fact that modern day society, largely because of modernization, because of urbanization, because of globalization, because of more accent and emphasis on material, so-called material development, has brought about so many complicated situations and crises as well. So we could say, I can just finish on this point, that although we may not be able at this point, many of us, majority of our devotees, I would say, may not be able to relate a lot to this, but it's important, at least initially, to know that our Shastra, our Acharyas, in particular our founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada, has spoken on this subject matter, not only spoken about it, but has encouraged us as a society to develop, or actually to revive and to protect such a culture. Our villages in India, for those who are connected with villages especially, as you may know or should know, are in severe crisis at this time. I've spent the last few years doing a somewhat detailed a survey, visiting 7 states in India, and seeing firsthand, meeting with local villagers, with leaders in the villages as well. And it's a very unfortunate situation, largely because we are forgetting these basic principles that are given in our Shastra. So in other words, to conclude here, there is a need to save our villages, which is the basis of our Vedic culture. Simultaneously, we need to save the cows in the villages. That's a whole theme and topic. Later on, possibly, we can speak on this. And ultimately, we need to save our Vedic culture, which is very much in danger. If time is there, a short 4-minute video, possibly, can kind of, okay. Jai. Thank you. Okay, let's see how we can do this. Okay, we just need to come here, and then... So this is a short video on one of our communities. Part of my research was to, in addition to going to 108 villages in India, to visit 10 of our rural communities in different countries. So one of those countries was in Australia. Anyone here from Australia? Anyone has gone to Australia? Anyways, I'm taking all of you to Australia this evening. Video. This is a community, the largest community. There are maybe 2 or 3 rural communities called New Govardhan. So it's less than 5 minutes, but it gives an overview, some aspects. This was the opening of their Goshala. Can close the lights for you.
Is to show practically to people that the cows and bullocks are a valuable element of everyday life. And I think in this way it would make sense to tell people to protect the cows. Otherwise it becomes like a sentimental or like, you like the cows and I don't. It becomes that kind of approach. So practically this building is like an educational center as well as a production center. In terms of the production, we have the milking bells over there, and within 3 months, we should be bringing about 1,000 to 1,500 liters a week. The reason for that is because 1,200 liters is actually the threshold for butter production. So once we produce 1,200 liters a week, we can make sufficient butter to supply our own usage, and the rest of the milk will be used for making principally curd, which then will be sold. You will see during the tour that we have a commercial kitchen there being built, and all the milk will be treated there.
We should read this. Krishna's first business is to give all comforts to the cow and the brahmanas. In fact, comfort for the brahmanas is secondary, and comfort for the cow is his first concern. Quite a Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha Jagat Hitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. This was the opening of their Goshala in New Govardhan. I was not present at the time. I came shortly after that. And just to highlight how the village communities and Vedic culture is not possible to actually to have without the presence of cows as well. So this ends our presentation for this evening. Thank you all very much. If there's any comment or question, we can take 1 or 2 minutes. Yeah, thank you for the lights coming back. Any questions? Yes. Any mic? Oh. Just now coming. Yeah, this works very well. When you much better than putting a mic.
Sometimes it gives up. Most of the time it works.
Well, technology is like touch and go. Sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't work. Yes.
Hare
Thank
Krishna
you.
Maharaj.
Hare Bol.
Maharaj, Prabhupada has stated we have to create Varnashrama Dharma.
Yes.
In that 4 classes are there. And also Maharaj specified, Srila Prabhupada's one of the requirement is classless society. So can you elaborate little what exactly this
how
classless?
to understand Very good question. Yes. Prabhupada actually called it classless society. And you know, initially when we hear the term classless society, then it means no classes. Normally. However, in the context that Prabhupada has given it, what he means is all the members of that system, whether they be Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, or belonging to any of the ashramas, they are all focused on the same activity. They are all devotees, they're all serving Krishna. In that sense, it is classless, means clashless. Clashless. Yeah. Whereas Prabhupada speaks about what is, when that is not there, that becomes Asuric Varnashrama. And there is Daiva Varnashrama, which is classless society, as given by Srila Prabhupada. Then there is Asuric Varnashrama, where Krishna is not the center, where people are materially motivated, etc. So, in one purport in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada more or less equates Varnashrama to divine culture. Divine culture. So therefore, our acharyas, beginning with Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they speak of Daiva Varnashrama, to make that difference. Generally, naturally, Varnashrama is meant to be Daiva Varnashrama. Yeah, like that. Yeah? Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah. Okay.
Hare Krishna. If devotees have some questions here, Hare Krishna. There's an online question also, Maharaj.
Yeah, please. Yeah, we take online questions too.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you very much for a very enlightening class. Maharaj, Kshatriyas are warriors and Brahmanas are the knowledgeable class, na? So where does other professionals fit into, like doctors or engineers or artists? And Vaishyas are the ones who are taking care of farming and cows. So
yeah. Actually, Brahmanas, within the category of Brahmana, there are many professions. Doctor is part of Brahmana culture. Architects, people who know about astrology, anything that is highly intellectual is of a Brahmana nature, and therefore there are many professions. Even within Kshatriya, for example, Kshatriya doesn't mean only fighting. Generally, we equate Kshatriya with someone. Fighting is part of the Kshatriya responsibility. There is divided into three. One is protection, which can be either physical or protection of dharma by in different protection of dharma, upholding the principles of dharma, because in the Vedic culture, Kshatriyas, they are described as Rajarshi, Raja Rishi, isn't it? Raja Rishi. In modern day society, the leaders in general, they are neither having the material qualities of Raja nor the qualities of Rishi. So therefore it's a big problem. So protection, administration, and welfare are the three divisions for Kshatriyas, and there are many different professions or activities. Lawyers is connected with Kshatriya, isn't it? Advocates, like that. Vaishya is primarily, yes, connected with production mainly of food, and that is intimately and cannot be separated from also cows. And that's why modern day agriculture is a major deviation from that, because we are producing what we call as food, which is actually, it is food, but it's food that has lost, according to statistics, maybe up to 70% of its natural nutrients, our food today, you know. Vaishyas, all of these three are described as the natural leaders in society, Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya, because they can do their activities largely on their own. They have a natural instinct and ability. Some training is also, of course, there. And that's why Prabhupada explains that the rest of society, whom we refer to as Shudra, and that's the majority, they work under. There's basically two types of people in any society, those who are leaders and those who are followers. If you have qualified leaders and followers, society will be nicely running. But if we have unqualified leaders and unqualified followers, as we do today, then it is chaotic. It is chaos. Yeah. So everything is nicely delineated in our Shastra, and so many different professions and occupations. For example, just to end on the topic, in the 7th canto, and I highly, again, in addition to Gita Nagari, in addition to the essay on Gita Nagari, I highly recommend, especially to householders, that you read and study the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, the last 5 verses, chapters, not verses, the last 5 chapters, 11 to 15. 11 to 15 chapters give Narada Muni's whole detailed explanation about Varnashrama on the request of Yudhishthira Maharaj. So within, in the first of those chapters, chapter 11, Narada Muni explains how Shudra need to have or develop seven or 9 qualities. So in other words, it's not so easy to be a good Shudra. Yeah, Shudra is part of the system of Varnashrama, and good Shudras means good servant. Ultimately, that's our philosophy, isn't it? Jiver Swarup Hoy Krishna Nityadas. We are all meant to be good servants. And Shudra means actually one who, 2 of the important qualities of Shudra is Satyam, truthfulness, and the other one is Shaucham, cleanliness. And these are 2 of the 4 we call pillars of Dharma. Satyam, Daya, Tapa, Shaucham. 4 of the 30 qualities, again described in this 11th chapter of the 7th canto. Human beings are meant to develop 30 qualities to be actually qualified or to be recognized as an advanced human being. And the 4 of those 30 qualities are these 4 that we all relate to, because they are necessary for one to become initiated. They are directly connected with the 4 principles, isn't it? The 4 principles that we all follow: truthfulness, compassion, austerity, and cleanliness. Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
There is an online question from Her Grace Varjeshwari Mataji.
Yeah.
She's asking about, do we have, Maharaj, a college to train devotees how to cultivate land and do agriculture projects in Iskcon?
Very good question. Actually, we have, since many years, we have different educational institutions within our society, but largely it has focused on the Brahminical dimension, and which is good, of course, but it is not complete. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada many years ago had given what remains today what we call a standing order. It is still standing, it's still not attended to, of establishing, wherever we have a center or a temple, of establishing Varnashrama college, where one receives knowledge, education, and training in the 4 Varnas. I'm actually, our ministry in India has been promoting in a general way Varnashrama, and more recently a group of devotees. We started, I think that was mentioned a little earlier, Varnashram College online. You know, when COVID hit the world 2 years back, practically everyone went online. We also went online, and we've been introducing different courses in relation to Varnashram since the last few years. And last year we have decided to actually get some land in Mayapur to actually establish an actual Varnashram college on site where people will be able to come. And later on, Hare Krishna, in the next couple of days, I can share some of that, some material we have on that. So there's a need to develop that. It's not yet been developed as envisioned by Srila Prabhupada, but it's beginning to happen, yeah. Okay? Yeah. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Bhakti Raghava Swami Maharaj ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai. I should say congratulations on the good facilities you have. Sound is good, and your arrangement for that. Yeah, I came on a good day.
Hare Krishna. So thank you so much, Maharaj, for bringing out this dimension of our Krishna consciousness. So the seminar will continue. Tomorrow it will be the next topic. I'll just... Sorry. Traditional. Tomorrow's topic will be traditional education. Maharaj will be speaking on that. There are 5-6 topics which Maharaj has given, and we are going to cover most of them or all of them in these 4-5 days of seminars. So Thursday evening Maharaj will be speaking in Gopala Krishna temple, and tomorrow evening same time 7:45 traditional education. I request devotees come and participate in many numbers and get the advantage of Vaishnava association and these special topics, which is also is important in our actually Krishna conscious life. So we thank you, Maharaj, for coming to Balramdesh, and now some other